She had nowhere left to sleep. No money, no family, no room in town willing to take her. The man who promised her a home had vanished with every dollar she owned. And by sunset, the only thing waiting for her in Copper Creek was the street. May Lynn had crossed half the country believing in a lie, a ranch, a husband, a place to begin again. Instead, she stepped off the train and found nothing. No man, no house, no future. For 3 days she begged for work. The boarding house turned her away. The laundry said they had enough help. Even the general store owner wouldn't let her finish her sentence. By the third evening, her stomach was empty, and so was her hope. That was when she saw him. The saloon doors swung open across the dusty street. A tall cowboy stepped into the light, and the whole town went quiet. Men moved aside. An old rancher slipped into a doorway. Even the horses tied along the rail shifted uneasily. Someone behind her whispered his name. Bo Callahan. May Lynn had heard the stories, that he was dangerous, that decent women stayed away from him, that once he looked at you, he could see every weakness you were trying to hide. But desperation does something strange to fear. It makes fear smaller than hunger, smaller than shame, smaller than the thought of one more night with no roof over your head. So May Lynn stepped straight into his path. Bo stopped. His chestnut horse snorted and tossed its head. He steadied it with one hand and looked at her with cold, pale eyes. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The whole street was watching. Then May Lynn forced the words out. Mister, I'm not asking for charity. I'm asking for one chance. Bo said nothing. He only watched her, her worn dress, her travel case, her tired hands, the fear she was trying not to show. May Lynn swallowed hard, then said the only words she had left. Please marry me. The street seemed to freeze. A man near the hitching post laughed under his breath. Someone muttered something ugly. But Bo Callahan didn't laugh. He didn't shout. He didn't turn away. Instead, he studied her the way a rancher studies a storm rolling across the plains. Carefully, quietly, as if deciding whether it would destroy everything or change his life forever. Finally, he spoke. His voice was rough, low, and calm. You don't even know me. May Lynn lifted her chin slightly. Her voice trembled, but she didn't step back. I know I've got nowhere else to go. For a moment, the wind moved dust across the street between them. Bo's eyes narrowed slightly. He looked at her hands again, hands rough from work, not soft like the women who usually chased after rich ranchers. Then he glanced down the empty road outside town, as if thinking about something far away. When he looked back at her, something in his expression had changed. Not kindness, not yet, but something close to it. "There's a meal house across the street," he said. "I'll buy you supper. You tell me why a woman would walk up to the worst man in this town and ask him to marry her." The meal house was small, warm, and smelled of bacon grease and strong coffee. The moment Beau Callahan stepped inside, the low chatter in the room faded. Not completely, but enough to notice. May Lynn followed 2 steps behind him. She could feel the eyes on her. Curious, suspicious, judging. Beau chose a table in the darkest corner of the room and pulled out a chair with his boot. "Sit." She obeyed quietly. Her hands rested in her lap, fingers tightly folded together. The waitress came over with a nervous smile. "What'll it be, Beau?" "2 bowls of bean soup," he said, "and bread." The woman's eyes flicked briefly toward May Lynn, then back to him. "All right." When the food arrived, steam rose from the bowls. The smell alone made May Lynn's stomach twist. She hadn't eaten properly in 2 days. But she waited. Beau noticed. "Go on," he said quietly. "Eat." Only then did she pick up the spoon. Her hands trembled slightly. For a while the only sound between them was the soft scrape of spoons against tin bowls. Beau watched her carefully, not the way other men had watched her, not hungry, not greedy, just studying. Finally he spoke. "Name?" "May Lynn." "You from around here?" She shook her head. "San Francisco." Beau raised one eyebrow slightly. "That's a long way from Wyoming." May Lynn stared down into the soup. For a moment she didn't answer. Then she sighed softly. "I came because of a letter. A man wrote to me. He said he owned a ranch. He said he was lonely." Her voice grew quieter. "He said he wanted a wife." Beau leaned back slightly in his chair. "And you believed him?" It wasn't a question. May Lynn nodded once. "I worked 2 years in a sewing factory. Saved every dollar. $47. That was everything I had." Beau's jaw tightened slightly. "What happened to him?" May Lynn gave a small, bitter laugh. "He disappeared. No ranch, no house, no husband. Just empty land and a town that thinks I'm a fool." She lifted her eyes and met his for the first time since they sat down. "And now you know why I asked." Silence settled between them, heavy, thoughtful. Beau finished the last of his soup and wiped the bowl with a piece of bread. Then he set it down slowly. "You understand something," he said. "If you married me, life wouldn't be easy. I don't live in town. My ranch sits 2 hours out. Nearest neighbor's 10 miles away. Winter gets mean out there. Works hard. And I don't talk much." May Lynn listened without interrupting. Then she answered quietly. That sounds better than the street. For the first time since she walked up to him, Bo Callahan almost smiled. Bo didn't answer right away. He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, studying her like a man measuring the weather before a storm. Outside, wind rattled the mealhouse windows. Inside, the room had gone quiet again. People were pretending not to watch, but they were. Finally, Bo spoke. "You sure you understand what you're asking?" Mei Lin met his eyes. "I do." "You'd be living with a man you barely know, out on a ranch where nobody's close enough to hear you shout." The warning hung in the air, heavy, clear. Mei Lin didn't flinch. "I've already lived through worse than that." Bo watched her for another moment. Then he pushed his chair back and stood. "Finish eating. We've got a long ride." Mei Lin blinked. "You mean—" Bo dropped a few coins onto the table. "You asked for a husband. I'm offering you a chance." The ride out of Copper Creek took nearly 2 hours. Snow from the previous storm still clung to the ground in pale patches across the prairie. The sky stretched wide and empty above them. Mei Lin had never seen land like this. No buildings, no crowds, no noise, just wind, grass, and distance. Bo rode ahead on a tall chestnut horse. Mei Lin followed on a smaller mare he had borrowed from the stable. They barely spoke during the ride, not because there was nothing to say, but because both of them were thinking about the same thing. What happens next? By late afternoon, the ranch appeared over a low rise. A small cabin stood beside a narrow creek. A weathered barn leaned slightly to one side. A split-rail fence stretched across the frozen pasture. It wasn't grand, it wasn't impressive, but it was solid. Bo dismounted first. "This is it." Mei Lin slid down from the saddle and looked around slowly. "This is your ranch?" Bo nodded. "Everything you see." "Ain't much." Mei Lin shook her head gently. "No, it's everything." They stepped inside the cabin together. A large stone fireplace dominated one wall. A wooden table sat near the window. A single bed stood in the corner. The room carried the quiet weight of someone who had lived alone for a long time. Bo removed his coat and hung it by the door. "You should know something before we go any further." Mei Lin waited. Bo stared into the fire as he spoke. "I had a wife once. Mary. She died 3 winters ago." The words came out steady, but something in his voice had gone distant. "Fever took her. Buried her on the hill behind the barn." Mei Lin felt a quiet ache in her chest. "I'm sorry." Bo shrugged slightly. "Life happens." Silence settled between them again, but this time it felt different, less tense, more honest. Bo finally looked at her again. "If you stay here, you work. We run this place together. No lies, no games." Mei Lin nodded slowly. "I don't want games. I just want a place where my past stops chasing me." Bo studied her face carefully. Then he spoke the words that would change both their lives. "All right. Then we'll make this place yours, too." But neither of them knew yet that the town of Copper Creek was not ready to let Mei Lin disappear so easily. The trouble started quietly, the way it always does in small towns. A whisper in the saloon, a comment at the general store, a sideways glance when someone mentioned Bo Callahan's ranch. They say he brought a woman home, not married, came from the railroad, Chinese girl. In Copper Creek, stories grew faster than weeds, and uglier. By the end of the week, the whispers had turned into something darker. Some said Bo had bought her. Others said she had come to sell herself. None of them had ever spoken to Mei Lin, but that never stopped a story before. One afternoon, Bo returned from town with supplies tied behind his saddle. The moment he stepped inside the cabin, he knew something was wrong. Mei Lin was standing near the window, her face pale. "Someone came by," she said quietly. Bo set the supplies down slowly. "Who?" "3 men. They stayed on their horses. One of them said you were making a mistake." Bo's expression hardened. "What else?" Mei Lin hesitated, then spoke. "He said women like me bring trouble." For a moment, the cabin was completely silent. Bo's jaw tightened. "I'll deal with them." But the trouble didn't wait. 2 nights later, the sound of horses broke the quiet darkness outside the ranch. Bo was already awake when the first rider reached the yard. He stepped onto the porch with his rifle in one hand. Mei Lin followed him. "You should stay inside," he said. She shook her head. "We're partners." 3 riders sat in the moonlight beyond the fence. The man in front leaned casually on his saddle horn. His voice carried across the cold air. "Well now, looks like the rumors were true." Bo didn't move. "State your business." The rider smirked. "Town's talking, Callahan, about the woman you're hiding out here." Mei Lin felt her stomach tighten. She recognized that tone. Men like him existed in every town. Men who believed a woman alone belonged to whoever claimed her first. Bo lifted the rifle slightly, not aiming, just enough to make the message clear. "She's under my roof. That makes her my responsibility." The riders laughed. "Responsibility, huh? Funny word for it." The man leaned forward in his saddle. "Maybe she'd prefer better company." Before the sentence finished, Bo cocked the rifle. The sharp sound cut through the night. "You'll watch your mouth." For a moment, it looked like someone might draw. Horses shifted nervously. Wind rustled through the dry grass. Then the leader spat in the dirt. "This ain't over, Callahan. Town's got rules." They turned their horses and rode away into the dark. But the threat they left behind hung in the cold air long after the hoofbeats faded. Mei Lin exhaled slowly. They're not going to stop. Bo looked out across the empty prairie. His voice was calm, but there was iron underneath it. Then neither will I. But the riders had been right about one thing. The town wasn't finished. 3 days later, they came. Not just 3 men this time. A dozen horses rode across the prairie toward the ranch, dust rising behind them like a storm. Bo saw them first. He stepped onto the porch slowly, rifle resting in his hands. Mei Lin stood beside him. Her heartbeat quickened, but she didn't move back. When the riders reached the fence, they stopped. The same man from before rode at the front. His smile was colder now. "Well, Callahan," he called out, "Town council had a talk, and we decided that woman needs to leave." Bo didn't answer. The man continued. "Copper Creek's had sickness spreading through the saloon district, and folks are saying it started when that girl showed up." Mei Lin felt the words like a slap. The same lie, the same poison, the same judgment she had faced in every town. Bo's voice was quiet, but it carried. She stays. The riders shifted in their saddles. Someone cursed under his breath. "You're protecting the wrong woman, Callahan," the leader said. "Women like her don't belong in decent places." Something inside Mei Lin hardened. She stepped forward beside Bo. "Then it's a good thing this ranch isn't your town." The men looked at her with surprise. They hadn't expected her to speak. The leader laughed. "Well now, looks like she's got some spirit." His hand drifted slowly toward the revolver on his hip. Bo's rifle came up instantly. The barrel pointed straight at his chest. "Don't." The wind moved through the grass. Horses stamped nervously. No one spoke. Then one of the younger men in the group shifted uncomfortably. He looked from Bo to Mei Lin, then back again. "She ain't done anything," he muttered. "Not that I've seen." Another rider nodded slowly. The leader's smile faded. He realized the moment had changed. The crowd behind him wasn't so certain anymore. Finally, he spat in the dirt. "This town's going soft." He turned his horse sharply. "Come on." One by one, the riders followed. Their hoofbeats faded across the prairie. The ranch was quiet again. Mei Lin let out a slow breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "They're not coming back," Bo said. She looked at him. "How do you know?" Bo rested the rifle against the porch rail. "Men like that only fight when they're sure they'll win. And today, they weren't." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The sun was sinking toward the horizon, painting the prairie gold. Mei Lin looked out across the land. Weeks ago, she had arrived here with nothing. No home, no name anyone respected, no future. Now she stood beside a man who had faced down an entire town for her. She turned toward him. "Why did you do it?" Bo frowned slightly. "Do what?" "Stand against them." Bo looked out across the fields, thinking. Then he answered simply, "Because you stayed." The words hung between them, simple, honest, true. Mei Lin felt warmth rise in her chest, the kind that had nothing to do with the setting sun. Bo turned toward her. For the first time since they met, his voice softened. "Guess that means you're stuck here now." Mei Lin smiled, a small smile, but real. "I was hoping you'd say that." The wind moved gently across the prairie. The ranch house stood quiet behind them. Smoke curled from the chimney. And for the first time since stepping off that train, Mei Lin finally had something she thought she'd lost forever: a place to belong.